Major Applications Planning Committee. This is an additional meeting of the committee to consider the former Nestlé factory site in Hayes, and that is the only item on tonight's agenda. I do have to do a few bits of administration along the way. Apologies for absence, please.
Yes, apologies to Councillors Yarrow and Oswald, with Councillor Cutcher present as Councillor Oswald's substitute.
Any declarations of interest? I should hope not. There's only one item, so that would be a worry. No, please don't do that to me tonight. The minutes of the meeting 10th of May apparently have never been ratified. So could you just agree those for me now? Thank you. As I said, there's only one item. Okay. For the public record, members have already conducted an extensive site visit to this site, so are relatively familiar with it. Not all members got there, but there was certainly a reasonable number did. I think most of the audience tonight, by the look I have, are probably representatives of the developers, lawyers, publicity companies, or wherever, I suspect. There may be the odd local resident hidden in amongst, but I recognise a number of faces from the site visit, so there I'm thinking I do know where most people come from. Councillor Kashid is one of the ward councillors I know is in the audience. I did spot him on my way in. You're very welcome. There are no petitions on this one, so it will be a straightforward presentation and then member debate. The presentation is fairly lengthy. I think it's the short version of that. Mandy, would you like to start with the presentation? And then we'll work from there.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. The application is for the redevelopment of the former Nestlé factory site, which is located in Hayes. The application site itself is just over 12 hectares in size and located on Nestles Avenue, which runs along the southern boundary of the site. This is a bird's eye view of the application site. The constraints plan on the screen shows that the existing site is in its entirety designated as a conservation area. Within the site there are 4 locally listed buildings, which include the former Nestlé factory building, which is the largest structure here, the former canteen block just to the south, a pair of lodge buildings in the corner, and although you can't see it on the plans, the railings which run along Nestles Avenue are also locally listed. The Nestlé factory closed down in 2014 and has been vacant since. When operational, the only vehicular and pedestrian access into the site was via North High Gardens, shown by the green arrow. Under the existing arrangement, the Nestles Avenue vehicular access itself does not provide a through route which can run from Nestles Avenue on to North High Gardens, hence the no entry sign there. So it is actually a dead end. The road layout will remain as existing through the redevelopment of the site, albeit there will be new entrances on Nestles Avenue. Here are some photographs of Nestles Avenue looking westwards with the application site on the right hand side, and again looking east with the application site on the left. On the left you can just about make out the former canteen building, which is proposed to be retained, and the listed railings are visible along that stretch. This is a view of the canteen from Nestles Avenue, and this is a view into what is otherwise known as the main promenade into the site and the locally listed factory building in the distance. As I mentioned earlier, there is no through route, and so this is just demonstrating the road layout at the top end of Nestles Avenue, and this is the vehicular access via North High Gardens. The site is bound to the north by the Grand Union Canal, and also the railway line runs along part of the application site boundary. The Nestlé factory has a high fence running along the site's boundary with the canal, offering no views out into the site. To the west of the site is the Squirrels Trading Estate, which is a fully operational trading estate. It has approximately 15 businesses within it. This is also a view of the rear of the site from North High Gardens. So the application site is here. The towpath runs along the Grand Union on the other side. So views of the site are currently just a closed boarded fence and the roof of the buildings. Gone too far. To provide some context, the application site lies just 450 metres from Hayes and Harlington train station, which will shortly be a Crossrail station. The Bullsbridge roundabout lies to the south of the site and is approximately 140 metres away. So that's the application site. The Bullsbridge roundabout is just here. This is the A312. This is the M4 and the Hayes and Harlington station. The proposals seek to demolish the vast majority of the site, circa 90%. The demolition plan on the screen shows in green the parts of the site which will be retained, and these include, for avoidance of doubt, the 3 facades of the factory building, which are the west, the east, the south, and part of the western facade. The canteen building is also proposed for retention, as are the railings which run along Nestles Avenue. The locally listed lodge building, so just here in the corner of the site, will be demolished in their entirety in order to facilitate the redevelopment. I'll just take you through some existing photographs. I think for the majority of people that went on site, it was the first time they'd actually been into the premises, unless you've obviously worked there. The site has always been closed off to the general public. It's only really been accessed by employees and visitors to the Nestlé factory. This is the main facade, which is proposed for retention. It's a key feature, although not the original entrance into the factory building. It has become known as what is the main entrance. Of note is that when you enter these doors here, there was previously a war memorial in the main entrance. Now, during the course of the closure, the memorial was moved for safekeeping and will be relocated back to the site post the construction works. This shows the side of that main factory entrance building, and features on the site such as these logos will be retained and potentially used in the on-site art strategy for the proposed development. This is the eastern facade of the canteen building, which is proposed to be retained. The canteen building has not been used and is in quite significant state of disrepair, but was always known as the hub of the Nestlé factory site. It was where, by its very name, the canteen was located for all of the employees, and social events were held as part of the Nestlé site. This is the interior of the canteen building. It probably has a lot more mess on the floor now. You can't actually go into it, but it is a stunning structure which the council have fought to retain and will be retained as part of the proposals. It's also important to note that the canteen building will actually be gifted to the local planning authority. This is the side of the canteen building, to be used for community uses when the development is completed. This is an image of the lodge buildings which are proposed to be demolished. They were previously, I assume, caretakers' facilities, and they do have, I know the images are, the photographs are quite poor, but these ones are better. They have an arts and crafts appearance. So the eastern portion of the site will provide 4 new industrial units delivering 22,000 square metres of employment floor space. The industrial development will be accessed by North Hyde Gardens, that's the existing access point. The western part of the site will provide residential and some element of mixed-use development. As I mentioned earlier, the canteen building will provide a small element of residential, but provide community facilities by virtue of D1 and D2 uses. So these will be, by their very nature, they could provide a health hub, they could provide a community centre. There is a restriction on the proposed on the application to prevent high intensity uses. So there will be 20 car parking spaces allocated to the community centre, and some uses within the D-use classes, such as banqueting suites and places of worship, obviously have significant trip generation, so they will be precluded from being used in the future development. There is also the potential that the nursery could, a nursery or an educational use could be used in that facility. To provide some context about the retained facades, we're trying through this plan to show you the proposed development set alongside what will be retained. So Unit 4 is one of the industrial units which is proposed, and it will have its front elevation, which will be the retained eastern facade of the former factory building. This, which we will go on later to discuss, is Unit F, which is a residential block, and it will comprise of the retained southern and western facades of the former factory building. The site as a whole, as we've mentioned, is designated as the Botwell Nestle Conservation Area. Section 72 of the Planning Act sets an obligation on local planning authorities to pay special regard to preserving or enhancing the character and appearance of conservation areas, as well as non-designated heritage assets such as the four locally listed buildings and structures. The site and conservation area are both listed on the Heritage at Risk Register due to the deterioration of the site. Whilst the proposals involve a substantial quantum of demolition, much of the demolition that proposed seeks to remove modern additions to the site, and English Heritage and the local authority are supportive of the removal of these modern additions in order to reveal the significance of the true heritage assets. Both parties are, however, disappointed that the extent of retention could not go further to retain more of the locally listed buildings. However, we have sought to weigh this in the balance of seeking a sustainable redevelopment of the site. The proposals in their current form have sought to demolish the internal fabric of the building, which English Heritage have deemed would not substantially harm the character of the conservation area, especially as 3 facades of the main factory building and the canteen are proposed to be retained. Whilst there is no doubt that the proposals amount to harm to the conservation area and the locally listed heritage assets on the site, the proposals take every opportunity to enhance or better reveal the significance of the site's heritage. One particular point in this respect is the site has always been closed off to the general public. As I mentioned earlier, only employees and visitors have ever had access to what is the conservation area. The proposals will now open up the conservation area and the canal frontage to the local community and the wider general public. The proposals deliver substantial benefits that outweigh the harm, and therefore the proposals accord with planning policy. I would just like to mention that through the proposals, if we go back a few slides, there is obviously the intention to retain 3 locally listed facades, and we will be proposing to add a condition or to enhance one of the existing conditions to seek that the works to the locally listed building are completed in a good, reasonable time. We don't want for the facades to deteriorate through what is quite a large, extensive development. So we are proposing to make an amendment to, I think it's the demolition condition, but we can touch on that through the addendum. It's just a note now, and I'm happy to take questions as it's something that's new. The whole of the application site is designated as a strategic industrial location under adopted London Plan and local policies. Designated strategic industrial land, or SIL locations, are designated in order to promote, manage and protect employment land for employment purposes. However, the Council are currently preparing the Local Plan Part 2, within which there are proposals to release this site from the SIL. The principles which underpin this proposed release are set out in Hillingdon's 2014 Employment Land Study. This is a published document which supports the Local Plan Part 2. The study itself recommends that 10 hectares of land within the wider site be de-designated as SIL to avoid the site becoming derelict, and this is supported by Emerging Policy SA5 of the Site Allocations DPD. The policy guides the site to provide a mixed-use development of employment and residential uses. Just for clarification, the site allocation is for a much wider parcel of land, but the application site comprises all of Site A, so to the easternmost part of that allocation. The application site is also within the Hayes housing zone and is a designated opportunity area, and therefore the principle of its redevelopment is considered to be acceptable, albeit the proposals are not in conformity with some of the adopted local plan policies. This again shows the demolition plan, primarily for the main factory building, which is otherwise known as Phase 1, just in case I refer to it as Phase 1 within the rest of the presentation. We move on to talking about predominantly the eastern part of the site, which is the 4 industrial units. 4 industrial units accessed here will all have their own service, loading and delivery bays and are all provided with their own car parking for employees. One of the other things to note is that offices are proposed running along the canal to provide some interest when you're looking at the site from the canal, and also to provide natural surveillance because the canal will be open and accessible at all times. Unit 4 is the unit where we're starting with, and that's primarily because the central facade here, shown on the plan, is actually the retained locally listed factory facade. So it's important in that we have sought to try and retain it and incorporate it into the industrial unit. Their colour finishes have also sought to take some reference from the locally listed building in some of the green tones that are in the canteen building that you may have seen in the photographs. These are the proposed elevations for Unit 1. Now this is the unit which runs along or has its frontage onto Nestles Avenue, and the frontage is shown on the bottom elevation. The majority of this elevation will, however, be screened from view by the extensive trees which are being retained along Nestles Avenue. Units 2 and 3 are also of a similar design to Units 1 and 4, taking a cue from the retained heritage assets of the Nestlé factory building and providing what is not the average industrial unit treatment that we normally see at planning committee. The next image is an indicative image of the view from the canal. So this building on the right is actually the retained factory facade, and this is one of the new build commercial industrial units. This image shows the materiality of the new build industrial units, which incorporates the colours again. Moving on, each of the commercial units will be provided with on-site parking with access again by North High Gardens. I'm sorry if I repeat that on a number of occasions. If we turn to the residential scheme, the development primarily comprises of 6 development blocks, which are shown in red on this plan. The 2 new vehicular access points for this residential element will be just here on the south and just here. I'll run through each of the blocks in turn. So just to provide some context, Block B, Block C, Block D and Block E are located on this portion of the site. And I mentioned heritage blocks earlier, and that's primarily referring to blocks F and G, and that's because they seek to retain the locally listed facade. Blocks H and I comprise of the locally listed canteen building, which is shown in blue, and this small element in the corner, which is the residential. Block B, all of the residential developments within this within the residential arm are brick-built buildings, and I won't repeat that. They will have varying tones and colours, and it's something that we are proposing to secure by condition in order to ensure that we have the materiality that we want later on down the line. Block B varies in height from 6 stories on its southern elevation, rising to 11 stories where the site abuts the canal and railway line. This block comprises of 490 residential units. Parking within this block is provided at basement level and at podium level. The site will provide communal amenity space above the podium car parking deck, which will serve residents of this block only. Moving to blocks C and D, they are both positioned with a 15-metre setback from Nestles Avenue. This provides a significant degree of separation between the existing properties on Nestles Avenue and the new development. Blocks C and D are both 4 stories in height along Nestles Avenue frontage. All parking for Block C is provided in a podium deck, and Block D has allocated parking to the rear of the site in Milk Yard. Block D is served, as I just mentioned, by surface level parking. Block C will have 212 residential units, rising to 8 stories at its maximum, and Block D will have 132 residential units, rising to 10 stories. We now have some elevational plans which demonstrate that this grey area at the front is actually the Nestles Avenue building, so they are no higher than 4 stories. Although you can see built form, these are blocks which are further into the residential site as you move towards the railway line. This is the context of Block D set against Block E as you're moving into the application site towards the canal and the railway line. Again, this is the flank elevation of Block C and the rear elevations of Block C and D as viewed from Sandown Square, which is a publicly accessible open space. This is an elevation of Block C. Here again, we move on to Blocks D and E. Now, E is just here and located just along the railway line. So Blocks C and D, just to demonstrate how the height increases throughout the site, we've got the first floor plan here, second, third. At fourth floor level there is no additional built form along Nestles Avenue, and then the block is staggered and increases in height as you go into the application site. And the majority of the blocks do this, so they have a lower element along the southern side and increase in height towards the north. This is Block E as viewed from Sandown Square, so it's a part 5-storey building and a part 11-storey, which is this element here as it reaches the northernmost part of the site. This is its northern elevation as viewed from the railway line and with some views from the canal as well. We'll just go through the Block E floor plans again to demonstrate the height and how it falls away the higher up you get along the building. Block E comprises of 179 residential units. Moving on to Block F, which we have referred to before as the Heritage Block. This is primarily retaining the locally listed facade. So if I point out the areas of locally listed facade on Block F which are being retained, it's all of this element here, and on the lower elevation it's this section here. Block F will comprise 300 residential units and will be 5 stories on its southern elevation, rising to 11 stories along the canal. This is the north and east elevation of those blocks. Where the application site meets the northernmost part of the site, there is a juncture between the commercial uses and the residential, and Block F has been reduced down in scale to match that of Unit 4 along the canal elevation in order to ensure that there is an appropriate view when you're looking at it from the other side of the canal towpath. Within Block F, car parking for residents is provided to the rear of the residential block, with some parking allocated for Blocks G and H. So this is the northernmost part of Block F, and this is the southernmost part of Block F here, going down into, and this is Block G. It actually does link on, but it is a new build on the other side of the retained locally listed facade. And again, that's the canteen building and Block I. Block G comprises of an L-shaped building, which is linked to the former factory building, and then wraps into the new Wallace Gardens Park. This building will be 4 stories in height along Nestles Avenue, rising to 5 stories, and comprises 55 residential units. Block H is a new build residential block located to the north of the retained former canteen building. Block I is the former canteen building itself. The ground floor plan shown on the screen demonstrates the relationship of the new Block H with the former canteen building. The ground floor of Canal Street, just along this area here, will actually be the area where the parking for the community facility will be provided, so it's as close to the community uses as possible. This is the first floor plan of the canteen building, and there is an element of additional floor space at first floor level. As I mentioned earlier, we are securing this by the Section 106 as a community use building which will be gifted to the local planning authority. The next few slides are just the floor plans of Block H, which rises to 6 stories, albeit the 6th story is set in from the roof, so it does predominantly appear like a 5-story building. The application proposes to deliver 35% affordable housing, which is located within new blocks B, C, D and E. The following plans that we'll now show you will highlight where the affordable housing is located, and it's highlighted in blue and pink. In total, 475 affordable units are proposed, of which 60 units will be 3-bedroom family units. The proposal seeks to deliver an affordable housing tenure on the site comprising 70% affordable rented housing and 30% shared ownership or intermediate rent. The proposed, 30% affordable rented and 70% shared ownership. So just to clarify, that's 70% shared ownership and 30% affordable rent. Sorry, that was just a typo. This proposed tenure split is not in accordance with the adopted London plan. However, the Mayor of London recently adopted the Affordable Housing and Viability SPG in August 2017, which offers greater flexibility in the delivery of affordable housing subject to local needs. Whilst the SPG is only guidance, it is a material planning consideration, and the Council's Housing Officer deems that the proposed tenure meets an identified need at this time. The proposal therefore accord with the Mayor's SPG and meet that local identified need. So this just shows floor plans identifying the location of the affordable housing throughout the site. Moving on to public open space, we've obviously mentioned that the site has always been closed off to the general public, and one of the key benefits of the application is that the scheme will deliver 2 hectares of publicly accessible open space, and this will be accessible to not just those within the development but also those in the wider community. We have detailed the quantums of space in the officer's report, but just to point out that this is Wallace Gardens and the biggest area of public park provided on the site, sitting next door to the community building and the canteen block. Soundell Square is located in the middle and runs with a linear pattern between the development site. The canal will obviously be opened up for full access, and then there are pocket parks located along the railway canal, as well as some allotments at Vivesh Square. There is a trim trail which also runs the perimeter of the site, again accessible to all. We are seeking to secure that the development does not erect any gates or close off the development and provide a gated community through the Section 106. So it's to secure that the 2 hectares of land that is being delivered is actually truly accessible and open at all times. I know that members did raise some concerns about potential antisocial behaviour, but there are measures that the Metropolitan Police can implement to try and prevent some of the antisocial behaviour that were raised as concerns during the member site visit. This is a plan which actually demonstrates the quantums of public open space and other communal amenity space across the site. Just wanted to highlight at this point, but some areas that the applicants have considered to be communal amenity space, the council have not added into the overall calculations. This is primarily because our test for providing communal and private amenity spaces that is of a quality and a quantity that is usable. So if I demonstrate, probably easier on this plan, there's an area along Milk Yard and Vivesh Yard, I believe. They were trying to demonstrate that that would be communal amenity space for those residential blocks, but because it's sandwiched between a boundary fence and the car parking, it's not something that we have accounted for in our figures. We wanted to truly reflect that there is amenity space on this site, but we're only counting those areas that are meeting our policy tests. You would have seen in your application pack that there are detailed landscape master plans which separate the site into 4 areas to really provide some more detail about what the individual public open spaces are. Public open spaces are also providing areas of play space for children. So there are some play spaces located within the communal amenity spaces, such as on the podium decks of blocks C and B, but there are also play spaces within the publicly accessible spaces such as Sandow Square and Wallace Gardens. Turning to transport. Now, to provide some context, the Council has recently approved proposals to implement a parking management scheme along Nestles Avenue and some of the roads off Nestles Avenue. It's due to be implemented shortly. The scheme seeks to prevent commuter parking along Nestles Avenue, which has been of significant concern to local residents in the area. As a result of the consultation, the only change to these plans is that Harold Avenue is not included within the parking management strategy. The residents of Harold Avenue asked not to be included in the parking management scheme. All other areas, as identified, will be part of the new restricted areas. The works on this parking management scheme will be implemented prior to the work commencing on Nestles Avenue. Now, the industrial development as part of the application site proposes 213 car parking spaces alongside the loading and servicing bays. The residential access, as I mentioned previously, will be off Nestles Avenue, and a total of 852 parking spaces will be located within the residential part of the site. 832 of those will be residential parking spaces, and that equates to 0.6 car parking spaces per unit. It is acknowledged that the level of car parking provision does not accord with the Council's parking standards. Carry on going through these slides. However, through the course of this application, officers have worked at looking at ways to improve the sustainability of this site. And one of the measures that we are proposing to take forward is a multimodal transport scheme. So that's the area of land highlighted in pink running along Nestles Avenue, and this is the turning head. The multimodal, or the MTS scheme, will be a new bus route into Nestles Avenue, so taking buses away from some of the more congested areas of Station Road and Northside Road. It will also provide a turning head in this location, and a new north-south bus route which links the north of the borough to the south will also be utilising this at a later date once implemented. So the level of car parking has been deemed to be acceptable for a number of reasons. The proposals allow for the Council to deliver a new bus service along Nestles Avenue. In its present configuration, Nestles Avenue is not of a sufficient size to accommodate a bus route. However, the applicants have agreed to release a portion of their site, so that's the land highlighted in purple on this plan, along the full length of Nestles Avenue to facilitate the delivery of a bus route, a bus stop and a turning circle. Now, this is also something that we will seek to secure on the other development sites coming forward along Nestles Avenue to ensure that the MTS scheme is implementable in due course. As part of the road widening proposals, a new off-road cycle lane and footway will also be delivered. Now, to provide some context, one of the questions that was raised at the member site visit was that whilst we have 15 metres of setback, surely that would decrease as a result of the road widening. Now, the road widening will occur on council highway land. The land highlighted in purple will actually be released to us for the delivery of the cycle path and the footpath, so it wouldn't actually be public highway. It also ensures that the retention of as many trees as possible will be secured in the area that is highlighted in purple. In conjunction with this mitigation, the applicants have agreed to contribute to the delivery of the additional bus service and also agreed to fund a review of the parking management scheme. This will assess the need to potentially extend the parking management scheme as a result of the development. So the applicants have looked into the feasibility of this within their development site, and so we are able to confirm that should the MTS go ahead, there is provision for a bus turning head to be accommodated within the development site. In addition, the following measures are also proposed. So as the implementation of a bus route, there is also proposed to be 5 on-site car club bays located along Canal Street. 5 bays will be provided from day one, and the Section 106 will also trigger a review of the need to provide an additional 5 car club bays should the demand arise at a later date. The proximity of the site to the Crossrail station and also the on-site parking and enhanced cycle path are also other mitigating measures. There are measures within the travel plan to encourage sustainable modes of transport, and also the contribution towards the north-south bus route and the expansion of the PMS are all mitigation measures that are proposed as part of this application. As a result of the mitigation proposed, the development does not result in a severe harm to the local highway network. In addition to the above, the mitigation has also been secured to improve key junctions around the site. So those key junctions are shown, circled on this plan. So these are all in the heads of term within the report, but it was just to provide you with some context about the works that the Section 278 will deliver. And the last circle here is the Ballsbridge roundabout, which is actually works that will be undertaken because it's a strategic road by TfL. Now, we have highlighted within the report that the application site itself does not have any impact on the neighbouring amenity because of the separation distances. There are approximately 34 metres between the application site and the existing residential development on Nettles Avenue, and there is more than 70 metres if you're looking to the north of the site with the separation to High Point Village. We do identify that there are a few breaches within the proposed development, and this relates primarily to a block here, which is Unit F1. Now, to put this into context, Unit F1 is part of the retained locally listed facade. Those 54 units will have a fantastic outlook on their front elevation onto Wallace Gardens, which will be where their kitchen, living, dining rooms are. However, the outlook to the rear, which should have a separation distance of 15 metres, is only 13.4 metres to the flank elevation of Unit 4. We have highlighted this in the report, so I did want to point out that this is where the breaches occur. There are also 2 units on the first floor of the residential block here, which will look out onto the roof of the canteen building. We have identified that this is a slight impact on the outlook from these 2 residential units, but it's not such a harm because they are only looking out onto the roof of the building. They are not looking onto a blank elevation of the canteen building. In all other respects, so privacy, outlook, daylight and sunlight, layouts and unit sizes, all floor plans have been reviewed and assessed, and the development does meet local planning policy requirements. Moving ahead, we have some indicative images that have been provided by the applicants. So this is a view looking at the retained locally listed facade here. The canteen block is located just here, and this is the new building in the corner of the canteen block. So this area here is all of Wallace Gardens. This is the view looking from Nestles Avenue directly into the retained factory facade here. This is Block G, the new build, which is essentially provided, whilst being in Wallace Gardens, it screens the rear elevation of Unit 1, which is the new commercial unit. This is a view along Sandow Square. Now, Sandow Square is an area of publicly accessible open space. The long-term proposals via the site allocation is that there will be a direct walking route through this application site and all of the others that are delivered along Nestles Avenue to take you in a more direct route to Hayes and Harlington Station. This is the view along the canal facing Block B. And this is former heritage block. So this is the area that has been retained as part of the locally listed factory building, and this is an extension above, and this is the former Sandow building. The application has been recommended for approval, and I will pass on to James Roger, who's going to outline some of the addendum items.
Thank you, Mandy. So just talking members through the addendum. So the first page is quite straightforward. It's just updating the plan list. So that's for members to note. There was a letter received just before the meeting actually raising two issues Mandip's covered in our presentation to do with affordable housing and the road widening scheme. So I will just leave them for members to note because the text there pretty much duplicates what Mandip said in her presentation. There's some housekeeping on conditions. Condition 34 is the cycle parking for the residential phase. Because it's such a big and complex scheme, we need to remove those specific number references of 4 and 9 because they're not correct. But members may wish me to add a global figure. So the conditions perhaps trying to be slightly too clever in breaking down phases of the development for the cycling. I think it would probably be better if that's reworded to just say the developer needs to provide a global figure of cycle parking for the development before the development is complete. So I'd be grateful if members could give me delegated authority to basically reword that condition. So slightly more than the addendum sheet is saying. There's some conditions were duplicated, so it's just simple deletions where there's been duplications. In a letter before sent to me rather than to committee before the meeting, the developer did point out that we hadn't made a point in the report about the SIL contribution. The reason we'd done that is the final SIL contribution, the exact figure hasn't been agreed between the parties, so it's only estimates at this stage. But it is a valid point, and I'm sure members will understand, given the scale of the development, there is going to be a substantial SIL contribution. We have some, for completeness, some standard SIL informatives to be added. And then, before I add a couple of extra points, one of the things that came out during the member site visit was a discussion regarding fire safety, where various sort of verbal commitments to provide a high quality scheme in this regard were given. The one difficulty with this issue is you are entering into building control and outside of planning, but I did think members would probably wish some form of informative to be worded, so it's not binding, but it means on the decision notice there's something in writing to say that the council expects that level of fire safety that's been mentioned to members to be met when the development is undertaken. So I've attempted to address that in the wording on the addendum sheet. There is a couple of other extra bits of housekeeping. I did realise that the landscaping condition has omitted reference to motorcycle spaces. So our standard for the record is that we seek for every 20 car parking spaces, 1 motorcycle space. So effectively it would be to add an additional line to the landscaping condition, and it's just a So the land, so 53 is the residential, but this would equally apply to the commercial phase. So effectively, it's to delegated authority for me to require our usual ratio across the scheme. I'm comfortable that can be met because this is not a development that's squashed into the site. It's a huge site, and there are opportunities to add to the motorcycle spaces. The other final point I wanted to add, two final points. Members will be aware from the site visit there was discussion regarding the war memorial. I've discussed this with our legal officer. We do think some form of condition could be imposed that effectively secures that the war memorial is reinstated on site. But if members are happy to delegate the wording for me for that aspect, as I say, it's basically just a simple condition that's ensuring that the war memorial is reinstated on site with details to be agreed by the local planning authority. And Mandip did mention about a change to the demolition condition. So, as Mandip explains, it's just ensuring that the way we'd worded the condition, it was trying to control the actual demolition without taking into account any reinstatement. So, again, as long as members understand how Mandip explained that, if I could give them delegated authority to amend the conditions accordingly. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, James, and thank you, Mandip, for that informative presentation. Who wants to start me off? Councillor Higgins.
I just have a few concerns. Overall, I think it's quite nice. But firstly, F2 and F3.
It would help everybody, I think, if members would refer to which page in the plans they're looking at.
Sorry,
as they do it,
227.
because there is such a huge bundle tonight.
I think it's block F2. I just want to know what the outlook is towards Shadow Yard. Obviously, there's an industrial unit side there. What is on? Is that a brick wall, or what will that be? What will residents be looking at? And obviously the same would be with F1 as well, looking back at Unit 4.
Yeah, F1 I think Mandip did cover in her
but it wasn't very clear what they're looking at. I mean,
okay, right, I'll take that.
So all of those blocks would look onto the rear and flank elevation of Unit 4, which is the industrial unit.
Yeah.
Now the separation distances between blocks F3 and F4 actually meet the council's...
No, I don't have a problem with the distance. I just want to know what will be on the wall. Is it just painted wall? Is it montage? Or what would it be?
I think it's the wall
or is it where the public art would be? I mean, I really don't know.
I think it's the industrial wall of the industrial unit, isn't it?
Yes. So you understand, as a resident, I'm looking at an industrial unit. Is it? You know, I know there's trees there, but it can be done in a better way than just a brick wall.
So effectively, if you look at this image, and that is Unit 4 here.
Yeah.
So the residents would be looking out onto the other elevations of this building of Unit 4.
Yes, but
is
it part of the listed part section of it, or is it just a brick wall? That's what I want to
It would be a new build. It wouldn't be brick, so the industrial unit would be provided in fairly standard material in terms of industrial units. It wouldn't be...
I think, for me, I mean, if you can come up with something a little bit better than just a plain wall, you know, those flats will be, those windows...
Yeah, but also we've got to remember the distance as well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. The distance is not really an issue. For me, it's what you're going to look at. You could, you know, if residents are going to look at something, it'd be nice if it was something nice rather than just a plain wall. But
so this could potentially be some more art featured
maybe
treatment to the elevations.
That would be helpful.
Okay.
But that's my issue there. Podium car park, I believe, is basically a basement with a podium. What does the podium car park mean? I'm sorry, I'm a bit lost now. Is it an underground car park with a...
One separate
I need to capture all of this stuff as we go, otherwise we're going to get very lost by the end.
I am trying to find you the elevation of Unit 1, and I know it's here.
Well, a lot of slides to play with.
Yes.
So, Unit 1, Unit 4. So this is Unit 4, and as we mentioned, this is the retained heritage facade. So this is the rear facade. Those units in block F2 and F3 would look out onto, yes,
Okay.
the top one.
Okay, fine. Okay, which is some
Fairly
sort of
so.
industrial metal, is it?
Yes, it will be traditional industrial unit materials. The only real facade of interest would be the retained heritage facade there.
Okay. I just think it should be something.
If
bit
I
more
can perhaps
excited.
help on this point, so there's a genuine intention by the developer who are sort of collecting up memorabilia from the site.
Yeah.
That sounds a slightly crude way of putting it. To do public art on the site. If members had a particular point on the site they thought could be the focus of public art, we could add an informative
Well,
and then follow through.
the problem with, I agree with that. That'd be very good. However, that would only be seen by public art, means that everybody should see it. No one can get access to that unless you live in those blocks. Is that right?
Yeah.
But I mean, if something could be, I mean, what I'm trying to say, it could be done that way.
It is quite a lot of units, though, councillor, to be
Yeah,
fair.
exactly. I mean, if that would be fantastic, actually, to be quite honest.
Okay, well, we'll just I'll note these as we go, because we might
Exactly.
decide somewhere else
So
that we
can we
want
look
something
at-
else, and we're going to
exactly,
lose out. In the end, there'll be only so much of this we're going to get.
Exactly. Through you, Chairman, can we just look at, obviously we looked at F2, F1 as well, there'll be some overlooking onto Unit 4.
We go back and consult residents of Harold Avenue regarding parking permits, because obviously the vehicles, an increase in the number of vehicles would be significant, and with the CPZ coming into force, it may be wise to just go back to them and consult.
There is a review mechanism on that CPZ, isn't there, as part of the 106 already? So that's there for future to...
Lastly, as a resident, locally and neighbouring ward, the traffic movement or vehicle generation that's going to come from this development, there's a lot in here already about it, but if you could just reassure me, North Hyde Road is already very, very busy. I believe there's going to be some reconfiguration of the 312 and the junction there, etc. coming. If you could just give us a little bit more information to make me happier.
Thank you. I was just getting my notes to hand. My first point would be that this development is on the edge of town centre, right next to Hayes, where you've got a range of local services and facilities as well as job opportunities. Furthermore, you've got 8 bus services, you've got Great Western local services into Paddington, and of course next year from 2018 there'll be the Elizabeth line operating 8 services a day. So I just wish to make that point that the site is ideally located to reduce the need to travel by the private car. The consultants have looked and modelled 13 junctions, and of those 5 are recommended for mitigation measures. Mandy did show those on the plan, but perhaps I can remind what they were. That would be Dawley Road and Botwell Common Road, which is some way to the north. There are proposals there to widen Botwell Common Road to create a left and a right turn lane. Further down Dawley Road, you might be familiar with Kestrel Way, Bettram Road and Blythe Road. That's the end of Blythe Road. There are proposals to increase the length of the flare on the Dawley Road south approach. So as you're travelling into Hayes, the flare there would be increased to improve capacity. At the junction of North Hyde Road, Station Road, and then further up the road towards Harlington, the junction of Station Road and Millington Road, there are proposals there to look at the phasing of the signals. A further junction to be looked at would be Harold Avenue and North Hyde Road and Crane Gardens. Here there would be a right turn refuge lane on North Hyde Road. So as you're coming westbound from Ballsbridge roundabout, there would be a refuge lane, sometimes called the Ghost Island, for you to turn right into Harold Avenue, thereby allowing straight ahead traffic to overtake on the inside, thereby stopping the build-up of queues behind.
Then the fifth one is Ballsbridge.
Sorry, and I've just been reminded by Mandy, mustn't take it as a given. Of course, Transport for London are investing a lot of money and officer time looking at Ballsbridge roundabout.
Does that answer your query or not?
It does in the most. Has anyone looked at the opening of the bottom of Nestles Avenue, the Nestles Avenue?
Into North Hyde Road?
Yeah.
That's proposed to remain closed.
It used to be open many, many years ago, but...
That has been considered as one of the first options for establishing a bus route along Nestle Avenue, but the preferred option was to have the turning circle. The reason for that being, buses would then have to turn right onto North Hyde Gardens and then right again along North Hyde Road before turning right again on Station Road. Now, because of the time taken to do that, it puts a lot of time into the service, and to retain a high frequency it incurs cost, because the bus operators will tell you they need to put another bus into the network. Okay, thank you.
That covers that. Now, I had Councillor Morgan, Councillor Edwards, Councillor Stead on my list already, and then I'll take Councillor Duncan again.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. First of all, can I thank the officers for such an extensive report, 500 pages on one item. Thank you very much. It's also great to see that the developers have actually spent a lot of time with you in trying to come to some agreement. I just have, after hearing everything, I've just got one comment to make on the addendum. You said condition 53 is being deleted because it's covered by conditions 34 and 54.
No, part of 53 is being deleted because it duplicates the cycle storage and electrical vehicle charging.
Yeah, but at the same time, we've actually deleted condition 54 because it says it's a duplicate of condition 39. Without keep flicking backwards and forwards, can we confirm that it is a duplicate of condition 39?
Yes, it is. 39 and 54 both relate to play areas, if you look at it, which is why the deletion has been made. 53 hasn't been deleted in its entirety, it's just the sections relating to cycle storage and electrical vehicle charging points, because they're covered by separate conditions in a more appropriate way. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm also very impressed with the extent of the report, and particularly the pre-application consultation that's gone on between the applicants, the authority, the council officers, the GLA and other bodies. And it is very difficult for me to try and replace their expert judgment on what is good design. However, I would like to understand why a new building estate or area of maybe 3,000 people, there is no consideration for the need for any form of corner shop. I would have thought that some form of retail within that size of development would be desirable, not least by some of the residents. And I'd like to understand why...
I'll ask the Head of Planning to comment.
There's two reasons we didn't push this issue. Firstly, on North Hyde Road, I think if I've got the road right, there is actually a small parade. So you'd actually introduce, which would, I'm sure the retailers in that parade were very glad to see this development come forward, because it will reinforce that parade, reinforce the attention of that particular parade. And I think it would be within walking distance of a number of the units. The second reason is that we've always seen this site as part of a wider master plan of the redevelopment of all the land north of Nestles Avenue, and there would definitely, well, the intention is when the other land parcels come forward, that there would definitely be some commercial or retail units, not big supermarkets or anything like that, but some more ancillary type units that don't compete with the town centre, and that naturally those residents of the Nestles development would pass through those sites because of the central spine, which is referred to as Sandow Walk and Sandow Square, but that would continue, and we think there might be a better location in when the other developments come forward. So it's those two reasons taken into the round, we didn't push for a commercial unit.
Thank you. I mean, that's answered. If I may continue, because there are a few more issues here. Page 73, paragraph 32, this is the GLA's response. They talk about the 106 to include provision of an early viability review mechanism. I don't really understand the language, but I couldn't see any reference to it in our 106 agreement.
There isn't any reference to it, I don't think.
That's a very good point, and there should be, as part of the heads of terms referenced on affordable housing viability review mechanism. I'm very grateful to the council mentioning that point. If I could have delegated authority to add that.
Well,
to the heads of terms.
Thank you.
Any more?
Condition 57 at variance with condition 53 2D, potentially.
Hang on. No, hang on. We've taken out 2D.
You have taken out 2D.
2D. 2D's come out.
Sorry, thank you.
Got that one.
53's out, is it?
No, 53 2D is out.
Thank you.
And 2B is out.
Thank you very, very much. Okay. And the car club, I do believe that we may be moving in that direction in the longer term, in the medium term. What provision is there in here to require expansion of the parking spaces to meet growing demand, if necessary?
So the application from day one will have 5 car club bays located along the Milk and Canal Street roads. The Section 106 will then secure a review of whether we can secure an additional 5, and it will be subject to demand. So it's a review to take place once the development is operational and occupied, in order to understand whether we can seek to provide an additional 5 bays in those areas. So it is hoped that there will be 10 car club bays on this site in the future.
Subject to demand.
Subject to demand.
Thank you very much. My questions have been answered.
Good. Councillor Stead.
Thank you, Chairman. The industrial units that are mentioned in the report didn't say what type of industrial units that they're likely to be. Will there be any noise restrictions on those units that we can control?
Well, I think there are noise restrictions on what noise can be transmitted to the residential developments, and there are 2 noise conditions in there, and I can't remember the numbers now. There's plant and machinery noise controls as well.
Do you say machinery noise?
Yeah, there are controls on the level of noise that can be demonstrated, and I know it's in the conditions, I remember having read it, but I can't remember what they are now. But they are there.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Dillon, then Councillor Duncan. I think we must be almost done. Oh, sorry, actually, that is the right way round. Yes, Councillor Dillon was going in ahead of you there. You were kind of first, yes.
Sorry,
right.
just going back to the I'm speaking on the behalf of. No. Ladies first.
No one ever does that. Go on, Councillor Duncan.
Okay. Thank you. Just a couple of points. Canal and River Trust on page 99 talk about the public realm beneath the railway bridge will negatively impact on the setting of the applicant's development, and asking whether some work could be done as part of SIL or 106 or some other means to improve that space.
It's 400,000 for canal side improvements as a whole.
So that could extend up to that
Well, I
point,
think
possibly, could it?
As to where it's best invested, I would guess. But James?
If it's been identified as an area, usually they are areas.
I'm getting lots of nods from all the key
Right.
people.
It sounds like they are aware of it.
Including the council's housing programme manager who is giving me a very strong nod as well. So, and I also think it wouldn't be an issue.
Yes,
so
that would be a good
give you a
opportunity.
collective yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
The other thing is that the police, when they comment on schemes, they look at how burglar-proof the houses, the units are, as far as they can be, short of somebody coming in and just knocking down the doors and the windows, which is stage 1. And stage 2 is how burglar-proof are the walks and pathways and the general layout. Do we know to what level the police are happy with this general master plan? I realise the details are not in yet, and so that would come at a later stage. But at this stage, we need to get this kind of thing right, because if it needs some small modification, then it's best that we know about that now.
Can I propose that the landscaping conditions are also in consultation with the Met Police officer, so he provides the input when we discharge the condition. At the moment it would just be done by the internal landscape officer, and then the Met Police officer can also comment on whether he feels it's an appropriate scheme or needs additional work.
So it doesn't just relate to landscaping, it relates to the actual configuration of the building.
There's perhaps a simpler answer to your question, that I know that Ray Goodlett has been involved from the outset in this particular project. So he doesn't always get involved in all the pre-applications we do, but he has been involved with this particular proposal. So when a condition of discharge is lodged, because we've got the secure by design conditions for both the residential and commercial phases, there shouldn't be any big surprises to him, because he has been in liaison with the architect.
Sounds like it's been dealt with. Councillor Dillon, I think that's the last point.
Thank you, Chairman. The construction management plan. Could you just outline for me, for residents who are already living on Nestles Avenue, when the ASDA development went ahead, there was a lot of dust generated, etc., to the residents of Station Road, and constantly complaining to myself as the ward councillor about window cleaning, etc., and every week their windows had to be cleaned, and the developers were not willing to pay for those. Is there anything in there about that? Also, the level of communication to residents would be welcome in terms of what's happening along the road, whether it's on a fortnightly basis of this construction, this road's going to be dug up for this amount of time. It's always beneficial to keep the residents happy, and that would be very welcome.
So basically you'd like a communication strategy added to the construction management conditions.
I just think for peace of mind for the developer and for residents, it would be very helpful, and for the peace of mind of local councillors.
I think we could add that in. I think that covers it easy enough.
Okay.
I've got it on a list of changes. I'm going to have to read this lot in a minute, because I'm going to miss some in a moment.
And finally, it's just a comment on the, we've got a lot of development happening within Hayes and along this section here now. The provision of doctors' surgeries and the pressure on schools needs to be noted, and there's only one locally doctor's surgery that's already beyond capacity. Trying to get an appointment there is 2-3 weeks, so you end up not even going, but just wanted for that to be noted.
Note, but obviously there are forums elsewhere to pursue that. Okay, Councillor Edwards, and I'm going to start to wind this one up, because I don't think we've got anything substantive coming out.
I was going to start winding up.
Oh, excellent.
For you, Chairman, and say that the general view around the room appears to me to be supportive of the proposal. There are some tweaks that we have spoken about, and I would formally propose to go with the officer's recommendations, subject to the delegation authority to the head of planning. And I've noted some here, but you'll probably add to them.
Well, if I read my list, and then if I read the list that I've got, and then if anybody's got any they think I've missed, they will no doubt stick their hands up. We've got a communication strategy to go in the construction management plan. We've got the motorcycle spaces to be added at our usual ratio. We've got the war memorial. We've got a global cycle spaces condition. We've got in the demolition management the reinstatement particularly of heritage assets to make sure that they are dealt with. One we didn't pick up but we needed to. In fact, condition 50 needs to come out because 46 to 49 already cover it. The police to be involved in the discharge of the landscaping condition. And then we've got informatives on public art, particularly in relation to block F2.
And F1.
F1, F2, yeah, both industrial units.
Yep.
The informative tree planting to ensure that there's in the mix there are those trees that absorb most pollution. An informative on pile driving as part of construction management, and also to ensure that lorry routes are appropriately managed. That's the list I've got. Head of Planning's got one more.
Just 1 point from sorry, it's not me adding anything. So the usual delegation, I'm requesting that, for instance, if at the GLA at stage 2 they want to add conditions, they be added. Any kind of further simple housekeeping that's not, removing conditions or anything like that. But as a final point, I know the developer wants to further talk to me about phasing in terms of whether we can split conditions in terms of their phasing. And so it wouldn't be my intention to start deleting conditions or unravelling anything, but obviously it is a phased development proposal and we don't want to tie the developer up in not unnecessarily. So as long as members are comfortable that I know the developer does want to have a post-committee discussion just to make sure the phasing works. I
would add one rider to that, if I might, and I think others would if I didn't. That is to ensure that We've already ensured that the heritage assets are protected as part of the demolition, but if there are any changes agreed to phasing, I wouldn't want it to be either at the expense of the blocks where the social housing doesn't get delivered, or the other way round, that the facades and so forth that are supposed to incorporate new bits don't get done. In other words, the nice new blocks get built, but nothing else gets built. So with that rider, I'm sure the committee are happy, and I know you wouldn't wish that either, James, but I just want to make that publicly clear.
And my colleagues just pointed out that there is one that you've missed, the affordable housing review mechanism we need to...
Well, funny enough, I had that written when I came to the S106. I just hadn't done the S106 yet. Okay.
Fire safety informative. I don't believe you mentioned that.
I did not, but it's in the addendum.
Fine, okay. And also there was discussion about under the railway bridge, something canal...
No, that's already being picked up as part of the work.
That's everything. I move the officer's recommendation.
So are you seconding, Councillor Higgins?
It was a little proviso.
No, I don't want any more little provisos, Councillor. You've had your bit.
I had, and I'm not adding anything, but James just slipped on there about any changes with the GLA. As long as they're minor changes. I mean, there's been lots of stuff in the papers about tower blocks and God knows what the mayor...
No, it'd be minor changes to conditions.
Yes, that's fine.
Not to the plan.
And on that note, I will second...
Thank you.
With all those conditions.
I think we've captured everybody's thoughts. So all those in favour, please clearly show. Good. The scheme is approved. I'm sure it was. And can I put on record my thanks to the officer team. Mandip, that was a superb presentation, but my thanks to all of the officer team, because I know a lot of hard work has gone into producing all of this by a lot of people. Thank you.